Welcome to the Dream Power Show, where your dreams turn into reality. Here is your host, Debbie Spector-Weissman.
Picture this scenario. You've had an aha moment, maybe from a dream you had, or maybe from an encounter with someone that's left you with the realization that you're not living the life that you really want to have. So, what do you do about it? Do you have a pity party with yourself and lament the bad breaks that life has given you? Or do you step up and take the action on the changes you need to make to achieve your goals? If you're living your dream life, of course, the answer is the latter. But where do you start? For answers, I'm happy to turn to my special guest today, Chad Cooper. Chad certainly knows a lot about success. As one of the nation's elite lifestyle coaches, Chad has guided athletes, celebrities, and corporate officials to reach and maintain their high levels of success. On a personal level, he's become an Ironman athlete, a devoted family man, and humanitarian leader. Chad has boiled down his philosophies on reaching success into his book, Time Isn't the Problem: 4 Strategies to Turn Stress into Success. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Chad.
Well, I am delighted and excited to get started. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You know, Chad, one of the amazing things about you that I discovered when I first met you was the number of items on your personal bucket list you've been able to achieve. And I believe at one point you were aiming for the Guinness World Record for achieving bucket list items. Are you there?
Apply for the Guinness World Book of Records for 900 of the most popular bucket list items to achieve before the age of 40. And they said, clearly I have achieved, and clearly it is something that should be honored. But it was a subjective interpretation of they couldn't come to agreement on what 1,000 bucket lists, what are the top 1,000 and get proper agreement. So they said, thank you very much, keep it going, and we can't give it to you because there's too much subjectivity to it. And I said, that wasn't the point anyway. The point was to celebrate and to live life fully.
Absolutely. Well, Chad, the reason I started with your bucket list is because I think it best represents your attitude about how to tackle life. Why do you think so many people never even try to stretch themselves in the way that you have?
The world's changed, Debbie. And the question is, have we adapted successfully to those changes? Peter Drucker says the number one problem that we face in our society today is not war, is not poverty, is not food shortage. Our number one struggle is the inability to manage oneself. And so the reason that I have been able to succeed in so many facets or roles in my life is because I've understood the art, the mental and the spiritual and the mechanical sides of managing myself, and then been able to leverage and repeat those tools. So there is a process that we need to do and then connect with the spiritual side in order for us to achieve. And if we can't manage ourselves, good luck with managing your finances or your relationships or your career.
Okay, so let's get back to what I said in my intro. Suppose you wake up one morning and realize that you want to shift your life's goals. What is the first step to take?
First step is to really appreciate and understand we all feel called to be born in this world to do something. And the question is do we have clarity on what our life purpose is? I think for many of us, we have a sense. We start doing something and go, oh, will that get me there? But we don't really understand the vehicles that we bring into our life and how those vehicles, like our career choice, our relationship choices, our religious choices, etc., how those specifically are meeting our needs and our wants. So the first step is really to get an understanding of what is my life purpose, to get really clear, because otherwise it's just kind of like wandering around in the desert, Debbie, and hoping that you're going to find Shangri-La before you run out of water. But most of us end up starving out in the desert, wandering around lost.
So, do you have any tools on things people can do to help them figure out what their purpose is if they don't know what it is?
As Mark Twain said, the two most important days in his life was the day he was born and the day he discovered why. So the easy part was the day you were born. You didn't have to do a whole lot there other than ask for a blanket or somebody to wrap you up and keep you warm and feed you, right? The second part is determining our why. And what I would invite our friends in audience to do is to grab a pen and paper. And it really works best to actually have a pen and paper as opposed to digital. There's something called the reticular activating system that when we write things down, we tend to actually retain them and learn from them better than just speaking or typing them on a keyboard. So literally grab a pen and paper. And what I would invite you to do is to write out in as much detail as possible, not like a sentence, but like paragraphs of the 7 to 10 happiest memories that you can think of, from as early on to recent, the 10 most profound and impactful experiences and memories that you can think of. Were you with somebody? Was it indoors or outdoors? What were you doing? Were there certain smells? Get as much detail as you can. And once you have 7 to 10 at a minimum, is to then go look at what are the emotions and circle them, underline them, or highlight them, do something that identifies the emotions and feelings in each of those. And what you're going to see is a common set of words or emotions and feelings that keep repeating. And those that repeat the most are your core values. See, when we know our core values, then we can find vehicles in careers, in houses, and all those material things that we say, yeah, it meets those values. And then you know that you're actually moving in the right direction. Those values are kind of like our north compass, our beacon to keep us pointed in the right direction. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, once you have those core values, how do you then uh, use them to create success in your life?
First part is really discovery of what's my mission or my purpose in life, and then it's about identifying and getting really abundantly clear on intentional language matters. And I can say the word, for example, father or mother, and for some people there's just great emotions of endearment, of gratitude, of joy, of love, etc. And for others that word is conjuring up pain, in suffering, in abuse. So our language matters. And so the first part is really understanding our purpose in a foundation of purpose in language. But then we get to a point where we say, okay, great. What do I do from there? Well, we need a framework or some tools to actually execute or implement those. And so those tools are really, in a nutshell, I would call that the rule of 168 hours. 168 hours is 1 week worth of time. And it's the great equalizer, Debbie. You get no more, no less. It doesn't matter your economic background. It doesn't matter your gender. It doesn't matter your demographics. It doesn't matter anything. It is the great equalizer. Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett can't buy 169 hours. It's how we use it that separates us. So if we know what our values are and our purpose, and we have a framework of how to maximize that 168 hours with persistence and consistency, then we have the ability to actually elevate and live what I would call a legendary life. And those are as unique as our fingerprint. You got to stop subscribing to society's definition of here's what it means to be epic or legendary, but by your definition, by what you see fulfills you. So there are some specific tools. One is, can you actually break down and see how effective you are? Average person is about 15 to 23% productive per week. My students are 92%. So the tools that I have them use are giving them persistent and consistent high-level results.
So what would be an example of one of those tools that enables somebody to go from having a low percentage of effectiveness to the high percentage that your students have?
Let me give you a story. A client of mine took care of elderly people. And she got to a point where it became monotonous. And she said, these people are angry. They're crotchety. They're can be mean-tempered, etc. But I want to just serve them. I want to bring some sunshine into their life. And I said, well, what is the purpose? What we did is we found out the purpose. And she says, well, I just want to give them some sunshine. I said, well, what if you actually put that as the appointment subject line every time that you went to meet with those clients? Because, well, if my purpose was actually just to give sunshine, then I actually know what my outcome is. I know why I'm doing it, and I can do that with joy, and I can bring them that joy. And so the thing that I would offer to our friends that are listening is, what are you actually putting in the subject line of your appointments? It's the thing that hits us constantly all day, whether that's on an electronic watch, whether that's on your smartphone or on a piece of paper, is we all live, breathe, and die by a calendar. And if you say you don't have one, you got one here. So we all live by 168 hours. The question is what are the subject lines that you're reading day in and day out? Are they limp language? Are they neutral, like the word workout? Or are they empowering? Are they connecting you back to the strength of your purpose? Or are they just simply subject lines that are like about discipline? Go work out. I mean, nobody wants to work out, Debbie. It's a terrible subject line. But what if it was leading by an example of what character and health are to my children? What if it was somebody that is older that said, being in shape to be able to play with my grandchildren at any age, right? What if it was taking a break to be able to play with my children before making dinner? Whatever that is find what's goodness. Find the purpose in that event versus just going through it like a zombie in, a hypnotic state.
Chad, we were talking about the importance of having a schedule and the importance of really maximizing those 168 hours that we all have in our life. But so many people have trouble struggling their roles as worker, spouse, parent, child, which often makes them end up feeling stressed out. So keeping away from just the work life, how can we use this the 168 hours to our best use in our entire life for everything that we do?
I think what we've touched upon at this point, saying we need a strong foundation, then we need a tool set or a framework, a system that can support us in a 21st century world, to know that we are 24/7 basically today, right? That more people will come back. It was like 87% of people will come back if they left their smartphone at home versus something like 63% if they left their wallet. So that tells us that we're always on today. But if we fill our calendar with just gotta do experiences or have to do moments, then what we end up doing is really creating a week or 168 hours of things that drain our batteries. And so what I would invite our friends to do is to look at your calendar, 7 days. Just look at the next 7 days and ask yourself, is what's showing up draining your batteries or recharging your batteries? Look at a specific item and ask yourself, does it drain your batteries at the end of that activity or does it charge it? Because the things that drain our batteries are the things that we don't understand what's the purpose. And when we don't understand what fulfills us, we risk being led towards brokenness. And it's kind of like smoking cigarettes today, Debbie. You know that they kill you. You know they compromise your logic for short-term emotional fixes. And only then emotionally do we feel guilty for the poor decision and feel even worse. But there's nothing about smoking that recharges your batteries. So we need to acknowledge that brokenness is a feeling. It's a feeling that we're disconnected. And I think that's really what you're kind of touching on there, is that we want to feel connected. We want to be able to feel like this precious time that we have per week is being utilized wisely.
We've been speaking with elite lifestyle coach Chad Cooper all about success on the Dream Power Show today. We'll be right back with our next guest. When is a car not a car? When it shows up in your dreams. Cars are one of the most common dream symbols. If you don't know why you're dreaming about cars or any image, it can leave you confused or scared. But that dream could be a solution to a pressing problem, or an insight into a solution that's been bugging you for years. Go to my website and sign up for a complimentary discovery session, and I'll help you understand why a dream is a terrible thing to waste. One of the things I love about dream work is that dreams give us the insights into our lives that enable us to make changes, either to ourselves or to situations that make us uncomfortable. One of the things I've also found is that for a lot of my clients, they are very reluctant to make those changes, even when they know that they're in their best interest to do so. This calls into question the very nature of change itself. And for this, I'm happy to welcome my guest today, Sharon Weil. Sharon has long been involved in the conversation about courage and change in her roles as author, activist, award-winning filmmaker, and somatic educator. She's the author of the books Changeability, How Artists, Activists, and Awakeners Navigate Change, and the Changeability Playbook, How to Navigate Your Own Change. And she is the host of the podcast, Passing for Normal. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Sharon.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm so happy to be with you.
So, Sharon, you talk about change in the context of changeability. What is changeability, and how do we develop it?
Changeability is really the ability to adapt to change in a more effective, efficient, flexible way. I feel that the ability to adapt to change is really the most important skill or tool we can develop in our times that we're living in right now. And how do we develop more changeability?
Yes.
How do we develop more changeability? Yeah. Well, it has to do with really, first of all, accepting that change is happening all the time. The world is moving constantly, change is moving, it's never not changing. And then once we accept, we may not like the changes that we're in or that the changes that we're facing, but to at least accept that they're happening is the first thing. And then to be able to reframe how we think about change, so that we can meet change in a more flexible way.
And so what are some of the ways we can rethink about change?
So again, I was saying to just accept that change is. I'm a somatic educator as well as an author in the things that you mentioned. And so I really look at everything in terms of movement. And so I like to look at change in terms of the movement of change. And so when we're looking at the movement of change, I'm either aligned with the movement of change, I'm aligned with the existing movement of change, or I'm in resistance to it. It's really one or the other. I'm either in the flow or I'm in resistance to the flow. And so just to understand that there are ways, there are tools that we can learn to help us align with the existing movement of change. So first of all, there's like 4 steps that I outline in my books. One is you locate the nature of the change that you're in, and you locate yourself in change. So most of the time when people are faced with big life changes, it's complex change. It's not just one thing. You move to a new city. Maybe it's because you have a new job, or maybe it's because you've changed your relationship, or maybe it's because you're dissatisfied with where you are. But whenever we make a big life change, there's many other changes that are cascading off of that change. And so to be able to tease apart what those changes are, and to understand that sometimes when we're reacting to change or responding to change or in resistance to change, it's not necessarily the change itself, it's the speed of the change. Maybe it's too fast or too slow to where we're comfortable. You know, everyone's sort of habituated at a certain speed. I like things slow and incremental. Other people just like to go for it and go after it. And so it could be the speed of change. It could be the unseen nature of change. You know, a lot of people say, I didn't see it coming. It was shocking. And if it's traumatic, it can really, you really are dealing with shock as well as the change itself. And so I find that there's change is always coming from someplace. Even if we can't see it, there's a trajectory that we can't see, and then we see it like the iceberg coming out of the water, and then we don't see where it's going. And so again, how comfortable you are with the unseen nature of this existence will determine that. And so, and the internal or external aspects of change. You know, is this an internal change? Is this coming from inside of me? Is this like a change that's being imposed on me? How do I feel about being dragged around by change? So there are different ways in which we can locate ourselves in change. Then we look at our resistance and how to dissolve resistance. And I know we'll get into that a little bit more. And then how to align ourselves with change with these 7 principles that I've identified are common in all change situations. And then, of course, there's the stepping in, the having courage and finding ways to feel supported in stepping into the change that you need to make.
I see that exactly. And just as an example, because I always like to use examples, I'll give the example of myself today, and we can discuss this. I got on the scale this morning and I looked at the numbers and said, oh, you know what? I ought to lose, I can stand to lose a good 5 pounds. But in the same breath, I'm thinking, you know, it's a gorgeous day out today and I'm going to get hot and warm. And I'm probably going to want to have some ice cream later today, which of course would defeat the purpose or the goal of trying to lose weight. So why do I say, on the one hand, I want to lose weight, but I don't want to make the change to let that happen?
Okay, well, you want to lose weight because you want to lose weight for any number of reasons, right? The reason that you let the ice cream entice you more than the goal that you've set is because you really don't have a compelling enough reason why. You know, one of the 7 principles of change is called spark fire, and it has to do with courage and passion and love and all the reasons why we, you know, what sparks us to make the change, what fuels the change. But really what it's talking about is, what is my compelling reason why? Why am I making this change? And a lot of times the changes that we want to make are not really, we don't really have compelling reasons why. So let me just say quickly that the 7 principles are: bring awareness, listen deeply, which has to do with feedback and understanding that our world is giving us feedback all the time in many forms. And listening doesn't just mean listening with your ears. It means, you know, through all the senses. Find community, which speaks to finding support and finding help for everything that you do. Proceed incrementally, which we talked about, which has to do with the strategy and moving incrementally, whether you're moving step by step forward or in a spiral. Align with nature has to do with proper timing, you know, aligning with the seasons, aligning with really understanding that there is a proper timing for your change. And that sometimes if we're not successful in a change, it's not the time. You know, you want to lose those 5 pounds in the dead of winter probably isn't the best time. It's cold, you need warming foods. It's, you know, there are better times than others. And for me, I find that aligning with the energies of the seasons gives you the best opportunity for aligning with timing. Have hope, which we talked about, and spark fire. And so these can be applied to personal change as well, and relationship change and social change.
Do you see a way the dreams facilitate or affect our behavior and our ability to change?
So another one of the 7 principles of change is called have hope. And hope includes imagination, it includes desire, it includes dreaming, it includes all of those ways in which we are lifted, all of those ways in which we are that which has not yet come into form is made apparent to us, right? So sometimes people say, oh, I'm dreaming about, having a new career, or I'm dreaming, I want this, I'm hoping, I'm imagining. Our dreams actually give us clues, right? They tell us what it is that we really desire. A lot of people want to make changes and they're even afraid to dream, or they're even afraid to imagine what that might be. And so I feel that our dreams are ways of communicating with us and telling us what it is that we really do want, or what might be good for us. They can act as a guide. And then, it's a relationship between the dreaming, between the have hope and the spark fire. It's like the have hope, the dream, the imagination. It's kind of like it sets up the volleyball, and the spark fire, hits it over the net.
What got you interested in this in the first place?
So I wrote a novel called Donnie and Ursula Save the World, which was a funny novel, like a romantic comedy about these mismatched lovers that, through the power of eros, through the power of their attraction for one another, did things beyond whatever they could imagine. And it's a funny book. It's all about GMOs. It's political. But in that book was what does it take to be brave? And when is it time when people will step up and say enough is enough? What is that point that each person has to reach when they'll say enough is enough? And that was really what drove that book for me. So much so that I wanted to talk to activists and change makers and people that I found doing really interesting things with change across many different fields. And so I started this podcast, Passing for Normal: Conversations with Artists, Activists, and Awakeners, about seeding change in the world. And in my interviews, I started to hear common things that people were saying about people that I was really respecting about how they approach change. And this listen deeply was really the first thing emerged as the common point that people were referring to, that all these people, before they went out and set out to do something, they listened, they asked questions, they went into genuine inquiry about what is needed here. Or if they went in with a great idea, they listened and they went, oh, maybe this isn't such a great idea. Maybe this isn't what's needed. Maybe something else is needed.
So my final question to you is, how can people find out about your books and find out about you?
Well, the easiest way is my website, which is SharonWeil.author.com. That's SharonWeil author.com. And there you can find out about my books and the podcast and the movement work that I do, Continuum, also called The Ageless Body. You can find the books wherever you buy books.
Thank you, Sharon, for being a guest on the Dream Power Show today. We'll be right back with our next guest. Hi, my name is Debbie Spector-Weissman, and I'm the host of the Dream Power Show. This is the show where we talk about dreams, both daytime and nighttime dreams, and how you can use them to create a life you love. Join us as we explore the world of dreams on the Dream Power Show. One of the things I love about dream work is the number of worlds that can open up to anyone willing to take the dive into understanding their dreams. But unfortunately, a lot of people just aren't willing to do this because, well, let's face it, dreams are often just plain weird and hard to figure out, and they don't want to put in the effort to make sense of them. Well, my goal is to convince you to make that effort because it's worth it. And to help me in this quest is my guest today, Linda Schiller. Linda is a psychotherapist, author, and dream consultant who teaches on a wide range of dream work practices. She's written numerous articles on dream work and has a new book coming out called Modern Dream Work: New Tools for Decoding Your Soul's Wisdom. Welcome to the Dream Power Show, Linda.
Thank you, Debbie. Nice to be here.
Linda, why is it so hard for people to make sense of their dreams?
Dreams don't follow the same rules, so to speak, as our waking thoughts. When we're awake, we tend to have a more sort of linear kind of thinking, and A follows B, and A plus B equals C. Where in dream work, it's more like loops and spirals and kind of like a Mobius strip where things twist and turn. So you need a special way of attending to your dreams that is a little bit different than your regular waking life to kind of unpack the mysteries that they have.
And how is one way of doing that?
A lot of different things to think about in terms of understanding a dream, and there are a couple of points that I can make. One is that dreams often, if not usually, come coded in some kind of metaphor or symbolism. So we certainly can have dreams that are pretty much like instant replay of what we did the day before or the week before. And in the case of post-trauma dreams, sometimes those dreams come and are just sort of like a replay of the traumatic event that happened. But often dreams come with a metaphor or symbolism that we don't understand. So the first thing we have to do is appreciate, oh, this means something, even if I don't yet get what it is. And then the next step is to start looking for associations. And part of doing good dream work is the ability to make associations between what you dreamt about at night and what's going on in your life today, or in the past week, or in the past larger chunk of time, as in the case particularly of repetitive dreams. And the other thing, two other things to remember. One is that when we have dreams, we need to contextualize them within our life. So you and I might have a similar dream, but it will mean something different to me and to you because your life is different than my life. So we have to contextualize it in the life of the person having the dream. And the dreamer is always the ultimate authority for his or her own dream. It doesn't matter if I'm working with someone and I think, oh, I know what your dream means. If it doesn't resonate as true with the dreamer, him or herself, then it's not true for them. And the final way I'll answer this question is that dreams also have many layers. So there could be many layers of simultaneously true meaning to any dream that we have.
You say it has different kind of layers. Can you elaborate a bit on what you mean by different kind of layers within a dream?
There's sort of two things I'm thinking about with layers of a dream. There's the layers within the dream itself, and there are also layers of what sort of constitutes a dream. We operate on a continuum between wide awake and sound asleep. And in that continuum are a variety of states of consciousness. So after wide awake, the next one might be like daydreaming, which isn't technically dreaming at all, but it's the vernacular when we're kind of spacing out and thinking about something else. The layer after that would be paying attention to what is called in shamanic and energy circles, the waking dream, where you're paying attention to things happening in your daily life that are synchronistic, that have meaning above and beyond coincidentally appearing there. And if you're paying attention, that can be a form of a waking dream. The next layer is that state of consciousness just before we fall asleep at night and we're not quite asleep yet, and just as we're waking up in the morning and we're not quite either awake or asleep, that in Jungian terms is called the hypnopompic or the hypnagogic zone. Those states of consciousness are actually very, very similar to our REM, our REM dreaming state. REM is rapid eye movement, which is what happens when we dream. So the material from that state of consciousness is pretty much from the same part of our brain and the same part of our being as our actual nighttime dreams. And the other way, that's sort of maybe the horizontal looking at layers. And then sort of the vertical looking at layers is layers of meaning within the dream itself. So the top layer of meaning might be just the storyline of the dream itself. I dreamt that I was on a beach and a tsunami was approaching. Boom, that's my dream. So the first layer of meaning is just the storyline. The next layer is that our first associations, when I'm thinking about being on a beach and thinking about a tsunami, what comes to mind right away? Is there anything in my life that this reminds me of? Have I ever been on a beach like that before, or that particular beach? Have I ever experienced a tsunami or a big storm on a beach? Do I have any associations off the top of my head, so to speak? So that one comes, pretty quickly as well, that second layer. The third layer is where we do most of our active dream work and do a lot of different methods and techniques for exploring the dream material, which is a deeper layer that needs to be, as Jung would say, unpacked. So from the dream itself. Here's where we start to look at the metaphor, the symbolism. We look at associations to story, to myth, to fairy tale, to the emotional energy of being on that beach and that tsunami, and take it past just, have I ever been there, to, what does a tsunami mean to me if I'm going to free associate? What is it about a storm? What does it have to do with water? In my own life, am I feeling any stormy emotions going on? Have I ever been in a place like this emotionally or physically or spiritually? Is this a repetitive dream? Is it a one-time dream? And then the deepest layer is where we connect with sort of a spiritual and or a world consciousness, so that we're tapping into sort of a mythic and mystical layer and potentially spiritual layer that the dream can be bringing to us as well.
Why do you think so many people are just not interested or even resistant to talking about their dreams or even remembering their dreams?
It's interesting. Because we all dream every night. We actually all dream like 4 to 7 times a night. We have REM cycles, depending on if you're a 5-hour a night sleeper or a 9-hour a night sleeper. You'll have more or less REM cycles. So it's not that people don't have dreams, it's that they don't remember them. So you're absolutely right in phrasing the question that way. And I think in part, we in modern Western world don't value dreams as much as our ancestors and people from wisdom traditions have valued the dreams. Back in the day, when we lived in tribes, the leaders of the tribes, the shamans of the tribes, were the ones who were the deepest dreamers and could understand and appreciate dreams. And dreams were seen as very, very important parts of daily life. And there wasn't as much differentiation between what we call our waking life and what we call our sleeping life. Sort of the time-space continuum was a little larger, and the differentiation was smaller when we lived on the land and we lived closer to connections with cycles of nature. And in Western science, there's a Freudian slip for you. In Western world and Western thinking, we've become worshipers of science, not spirituality. And there have been too many scientists who over the years have sort of dismissed the value of dreams, saying, oh, they're random neurological firings of the brain. They're just little hiccups and they don't mean anything. And you hear that often enough and you go, well, yeah, even though I might have thought it meant something, all these scientists are telling me it doesn't, so I'm just going to believe them. So I think we've swung a little bit too far over to that sort of rationalist viewpoint and aren't giving enough attention to the other parts of our being and our brains.
I like to say they have a very practical benefit as well in terms of what they offer us.
That term, it's like, oh, I'll sleep on it, is actually really a good idea, because we come up with creative solutions to problems when we sleep. We come up with insights when we sleep. Lots of scientific inventions, artistic works, musical compositions. came straight out of someone's dream.
Linda, you run an ongoing dream group. How does working in a group help people understand their dreams?
We all have blind spots, and we can't see the back of our own heads without not only one mirror, but at least two, and someone else to hold that second mirror. So when we're working with other people around a dream, they can see things that we can't see in a dream. That's sort of the bottom line of one of the benefits of working in a dream circle for the dreamer, is that we get different perspectives on our dream that we might not have thought of, because we get in our own way sometimes. And when things particularly are symbolic or metaphorical, we kind of get stuck in, oh, this is what I dreamed, but I can't figure it out. And other people can see it from the outside and have a different perspective. And then for the other members of the dream circle, we all resonate together with everyone's dream. So that if I'm talking about my dream, you may resonate with some aspect of my dream and get your own aha or insight or burst of creativity as a result of being in that space of working at this dream.
Can you give us an example of someone who came into your group with one of these hard to figure out dreams, and how he or she benefited from this?
So I've been actually starting some of my blogging on working with someone's dreams related to some childhood trauma. And the dreams she was coming in with were dreams about having like sticky taffy in her mouth. And she couldn't talk, or she couldn't open her jaw all the way, or when she tried to talk, she just got a little peep come out. But a lot of this sort of sticky stuff in her mouth, and that was like a repetitive dream for her. And so we worked on it for a while, and she'd always say, oh, it's just that stupid dream again. It doesn't mean anything. And the response to a repetitive dream is, well, actually, it's even more important if it's a repetitive dream, because it's something unfinished. It's something your psyche really wants you to know and wants you to do something about. And it's going to keep coming back and potentially escalating until you kind of get it, whatever the it is that you're supposed to get, and then take the action step of whatever the action is you're supposed to do. So we worked with her for a while and asked her questions about, her mouth and about food and about what it meant. And we got to the layer of metaphor where she couldn't speak up for herself. She felt tongue-tied. She felt like words got stuck in her throat. Right? So here's sort of a layer of metaphor that we're starting to get to, as opposed to, I have a hard time chewing certain foods. That there was nothing about that for her. So then we asked, okay, so what does that mean? Let's think about it in terms of your life today, in terms of your history. And working together, she came up with kind of two things. One was sort of more current, which is she's a sort of quiet, mild-mannered person, very lovely woman. She describes herself as kind of conflict avoidant. She doesn't like to speak up. And she's been having this boss at work who has been kind of unreasonable and making unreasonable demands, and she hasn't been able to speak up for herself to say anything about that. So that was her first aha. And we worked with her. Literally, sometimes we do physical embodied dream work where we had her actually like pulling that taffy out of her mouth to get it unstuck. And we had her sort of doing this motion that I'm doing in her dream, and then talked about what else she could do in waking life with the boss. So that was one layer that she was working on and starting to think about. And then as we got to know each other better and she was in the group longer, she told us about growing up with a mom who was pretty mentally ill and was sick a lot of her life. And she was really scared all the time that if she said the wrong thing, it could like tip her mother over into a worse crisis. So she spent a lot of time sort of swallowing her anger and her fear and her pain, and didn't speak up about these things. I had been living with that for years and years and years. And that was the second aha. So there's this current event at work going on of this boss, and I can't speak up to him. And then this sort of older history from, 40 some years ago of not being able to speak up as a child. So one layer of intervention, if you will, is just getting the connections made between the metaphor in the dreams and what's going on in either current or past life.
She had been of a mind to work on the dreams by herself. She might not have gotten that confidence to speak up if she hadn't had the support of the group supporting her in the process.
In addition to getting a lot of two heads are better than one or six heads are better than one around what does my dream mean, working in a dream circle is also the support and the encouragement of everybody to take the dream learning and take the dream insight out into the world, into action, and then get really kind of appreciated and applauded for having done it. And that's invaluable too.
How can people learn more about you?
Well, I have a website, lindayaelschiller.com is my website, and I have a blog, awaketoyourdreams.com, and my book is actually already up on Amazon and Goodreads and other platforms for pre-order. It comes out in December, but it's up there for pre-order if you want to read about it.
We've been speaking with writer and dream expert Linda Schiller. We're going to take a short break here, and we'll be right back with our next guest. Join me next time as I speak with these empowering creatives. Dream wizard Walter Berry, the crystal junkie Jolie DeMarco, workout innovator Patrick Spring, and multimedia artist Susie Plaxon. Next time on the Dream Power Show. Dreams can be defined as a series of thoughts, images, and sensations occurring in a person's mind during sleep. It can be a daydream or a fantasy about something you truly desire. Dreams can be inspirational and take us in directions we never thought possible. This is what happened to my guest today, Kate Montana. Kate is a thinker and author who had an inspiration one day that led her to write her new novel, Apollo and Me. And I'm very happy to welcome her as a guest to the Dream Power Show today. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Debbie. I'm so excited to be on the show.
You know, a book is good when it works on multiple levels. And that is so true for Apollo and Me. I mean, on one level, it's a kick-ass romance novel, and it's a great summer read. But it's so much more than that. It's a story of rebirth. It's a story of the gods, the battles of the gods, an ode to the sacred feminine, and half a dozen other wonderful things about this book. But it all began with a vision. So tell us, what was this vision you had?
I've been a very left-brain person and done a lot of work I've been a journalist for 35 years, and I've been writing nonfiction titles for years. So I was in Greece writing a book for Simon & Schuster called The E-Word, which was about ego, enlightenment, and ego psychology and evolution, some pretty heavy stuff. I took a break. I went to the Temple of Apollo at Delphi in Greece. I was staying in Greece at a friend's house for 3 months writing the book. And so I had to take a break. I'd go to Delphi. I've always had a thing about Apollo and the Greek gods, Debbie. It was the very first, Delphi in Greece was the very first place I ever went when I left the United States when I was 19 to travel. That was the place I wanted to go see. Prescient. Okay, so 40 years later, I'm back at Delphi, you know, the tourists and all that. It's still beautiful, still amazing and magical, but I wanted to get away from people. So the next day I took a hike early in the morning up Mount Parnassus, and I'm sitting in the sunshine. I'm on top of the world. I'm on top of a mountain. I'm overlooking the Temple of Apollo, and maybe I'd had a little bit too much Greek coffee to drink that morning. But so I'm sitting there and minding my own business, and I had a vision. In my mind's eye, I just saw this beautiful man just bound over the rocks towards me, sat down right next to me. He had copper-colored eyes, and he just turned to me and he said, "Hi, I'm Apollo. I have things to tell humanity. Let's talk." And then that was it.
How much of that was,
It was like I didn't know whether I had
Yeah, how much of that was in the vision? Was the whole conversation with Apollo in that vision you had?
No, the vision itself was, hi, I'm Apollo. I have things to tell humanity. Let's talk. And then poof, he was gone. So it just it knocked me for a total loop. I was so shocked. And I literally walked back down the mountain and pulled out my computer, because when I write, I think I really kind of channel, because I just go into a theta or an alpha state and information just flows. And I always know that it's not like just me when I think I'm going this way, and then all of a sudden the book or whatever I'm writing takes me this way. I'm like, oh, that's not me. That's something coming through me. So I went back to my room in my hotel in Delphi, and I pulled out my computer and I just tuned into those eyes and the energy of this vision, and the story just started to unfold. I mean, it was just instantaneous. It was just, I hesitate to say it was like a download, but it was kind of like a download. And then I had to go back to my left brain functioning and write the other book, Ego Psychology and Enlightenment, that I was working on. But I kid you not, 3 days after I got through writing the E-word and sent my manuscript into my publisher, I was back at the computer communing with Apollo and those eyes and that energy, and just going, all right, what else have you got to say? And 3 months, within 3 months, I mean, I did this, I was just a crazy person. I was so obsessed, Debbie, with this vision and with Apollo and his energy, and the things that started to flow out and through me were just like, wow. And it was a love story, which totally blew my mind. It was like, but so much of what Apollo has to say is about, let's do this marriage of heaven and earth, and mind, body, and spirit, the emotions and love and the mind. Let's get it all together, girl.
When you first had that vision, were you envisioning a love story coming out of it, or that just hit you?
Debbie, I had no idea what was going to come out. I had no idea. I didn't know if, number one, what had happened had really happened. I didn't know if it was a fantasy or a delusion or a true vision. And when I sat down to write, I had zero idea about anything. And this story just started, and the conversation that I might have had with him started flowing. And then the story just kept flowing. And then more information from Apollo kept showing up. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm along for the ride.
And what a ride it is. You said before that you had always had an attraction to Apollo. Why is that?
In retrospect, it's really clear. I during the course of writing this book, and in the course of the last several years, it took 4 years to bring this book to the world. I've realized that I definitely had a past life as a priestess in around 330 BC at the Temple of Apollo in Greece, and that this energy that I was engaging was not. It was very familiar, deeply familiar to me. And so, to this day, Debbie, I've never seen Apollo again. I've not felt a presence looming over me or anything like that. But there's just been this kind of a very wise, very solid, but very funny, not funny, humorous, lighthearted energetic, playful, energetic, that enliven time I tune into Apollo's energy. And it's just really brought me into my feminine nature like nothing else. It's brought me into my writing this book, engaging Apollo, archetype, fantasy, delusion, has so broadened me as a woman. It's taken me out of my very left brain scientific, this is how the world is, and vaulted me so deep into my body, into my emotions. It was really, really hard for me to admit that I'd written a romance novel. It's still hard for me to admit that I've written a romance novel, because, and I always hasten to say, but it's so much more, because, you know, there's this judgment about the feminine in me still that says, oh, you know, well, you know, science good and love stories are just frivolous fluff. And it's like, and it's that kind of marginalization of love and the spiritual aspect of sexuality and sensuality, and all of the story of a woman as we grow older, and then we begin to think we're losing our juice, we're losing our feminine edge because we don't look hot anymore, and then all this insecurity about sexuality and appearance and age show up, and all of these issues that I'd kind of like shoved under the carpet for years, Debbie, were just like right in my face writing this book.
Right. One of the refreshing angles of this book is that your heroine's not the typical ravishing beauty that you see so often in romance novels. She's a mature, seasoned woman in her 60s. So what made you decide to go there?
I confess this book is highly autobiographical because in the writing of it, Debbie, I could not separate myself from, separate myself from the story. And so much of my issues as a woman, as a spiritual woman, who, as I say, was struggling with my sexuality of all things. And it's so much of my spirituality is about getting out there to God. You know, let me have my eyes closed, let me meditate, and then I will be one with God. But it's like, I'm one with God in this body. I'm divine in this body. And I discovered through the writing of this book how deeply I was simply paying lip service to, oh, yes, everything is spirit. Yes, my body is spirit. My sexuality is God too. Get me out of here. You know, I was totally paying lip service to that, you know, that divine union. Apollo just slammed me right into the carpet on that one. And it's just like, you know, you've got to get in your body. So writing the story and my protagonist, Catherine, and putting her as 60-something and with all of these issues, it just seemed to be it seemed to be the right thing to do, because that's just what flowed out.
Kate, early on in the story, Apollo gives Catherine a choice about having eternal youth, and she has a choice to make there. Why did she make the choice she did?
Oh, yeah, that was a shocker. I mean, because that's basically how the book started out. That was the storyline. And Apollo, this entity, this whatever, actually tapped really deep inside one of my biggest issues, which was with my aging. I hate getting older, or I hated getting older. And I had real issues with it about my body beginning to sag and drag and et cetera, et cetera. And wow, he just nailed me from the outgo about my deepest wound and issue at the moment. And so the fact that, because, you know, I can't separate my own healing out of this book. You know, Apollo was very, very clear. He was the god of healing, amongst other things, the god of music, the god of wisdom and light. But he's a healer. And he made no bones about it through the story that he was here to heal me and to heal humanity, especially women, by opening up this can of worms in all of us in the feminine, that's keeping us tamped down from being our full expression. And so I had to deal with my aging issues. And so, yeah, Apollo, I don't think this is going to give anything away. Apollo approaches Catherine, the protagonist, and he offers her eternal youth, if she will worship him. So she makes the decisions she makes, and on the book goes. And it's a deeply spiritual dive, as you said. There, yes, on the surface, it's a romance. And it's also a romance about an older woman and a younger man.
Kate, how can our listeners find out more about you and about the book?
They can buy it on Amazon.com or order it through any bookstore. And they can find me at www.kate, with a C, well, I guess let's just with a C, KateMontana.com, or on Facebook, The Real Kate Montana.
We've been speaking with writer Kate Montana about Apollo and Me. This is Debbie Spector Weissman. I hope you've enjoyed the show and tune in next time. Until then, sweet dreams, everybody.